The first Star Citizen roadmap update for 2022 is in, and it's not looking good for this year. I don't usually cover the day-to-day news for Star Citizen because I leave that generally to others who I think do a better job and have a bit more time than I do. But this update, well, I can't pass it up because it's something I need to talk about. So let me bring you up to speed. In the recent Roadmap Roundup, a bi-weekly post that details changes to the roadmap, we learned that CIG have been looking into defocusing the roadmap view and instead pushing our eyes towards the more detailed progress tracker. In summary, they're hoping that backers could understand the complexity of development by seeing just how many tasks are linked to features we all want to see in the game. The big problem they've been facing is that because of the fluidity of their development, distant roadmap feature cards often get shuffled, removed, or re-added, which always leads to people misinterpreting them as not fulfilling promises, which of course leads to further bad press and community sentiment. According to CIG, this also doesn't just affect backer morale, it appears to be affecting the development team morale as well, creating what they describe as unnecessary confusion among the teams. Earlier last year then, CIG attempted to make some changes to address this with the addition of the tentative versus confirmed feature cards. To refresh your memory, this was to establish a difference between features they were certain were going to be in the next patch versus ones that they weren't yet positive about. Unfortunately though, this did little to quell the misunderstandings as they described with how the roadmap should be interpreted, and thus, according to this new post, they from here on forward will only be adding feature cards to the roadmap when they are absolutely certain they will be in the next patch. And further, they will only show features for the next quarter's patch as opposed to patches further on. They explain that this will hopefully reduce confusion and negativity going forward by reducing the amount of shuffling that we're going to see on the roadmap. The post then went on to describe the litany of big feature cards that they're going to be removing from the next patch, for now, until they can be commit to. Cue Spectrum Implosion and countless Reddit meme posts about Star Citizen and their roadmap track record. Okay, so now we're on the same page with the news, so here comes my rant. I think that this change is a mistake. It looks too much to me like they're giving into pressure from a negative element of the community that lashes out every time a card is shuffled or removed. To understand why I feel this way about this change, I think it's first important for me to speak plainly about how I feel about Star Citizen's development in these recent years. As someone who has had their finger on the pulse of the community as one of the largest content creators for Star Citizen, I've long sensed in these past 2 years that interest in Star Citizen has been waning. The fact of the matter is that it has been 10 years, and Squadron 42 is nowhere in sight. It's been opaque since 2019, and with a recent news article pointing to at least 2 more years of development for that game, it's clear that we're not going to see it anytime soon. Then you throw in the fact that Star Citizen's development has felt stagnant in 2020 and 2021, and you have people understandably being curious about what's going on. That sentiment may be somewhat incongruent to some of you considering that their funding numbers have continued to climb. But as I've covered in earlier videos, such as the one about Invictus last year, the lion's share of this increase in funding is due to existing backers spending more money on ships, and not on account of new players coming in. These numbers come from tracked funding versus new backers. Now I see that as somewhat as unhealthy to the game's growth. And this is further supported by diminishing interest on YouTube and Twitch for Star Citizen, and an increase in negative posts by gamers, backers, content creators, and even news outlets outside the Star Citizen community, which, to be frank, isn't really anything new. The source of this downturn, as I see it, is in a lowering of morale, something that I've already covered in my Not Enough Progress video I posted about 6 months ago, where I describe a general feeling in the community and myself of there being a lack of tangible progress, which, to be clear, shouldn't be confused with actual progress. Most of what we've seen in these past 2 years have been intangibles like systems, back-end systems, visuals, and polish-related items, with a couple of new locations that didn't really ultimately impact gameplay in any significant way. The result has continued to be that returning players notice little to no difference between the Star Citizen that they experienced 2 years ago and the one of today. That ultimately is the most important measure of progress. It's the bottom line, the tangibles that create new gameplay. And I think that this is at the heart of this lowering morale in the community. So then one of the biggest problems I see with this roadmap change is that, in my view, the roadmap has always been a major pillar in preventing further drops in morale throughout the community. And it's been this way since Star Citizen started having these roadmap feature cards in 3.0. They've always given us something to look forward to, something to be hopeful for. And so what I worry is that if they're going to defocus the roadmap and instead focus on the progress tracker, they're going to be removing one of the clearest areas we have to go to understand what the goals are for Star Citizen this year and going forward, which can't be said about the progress tracker. Now please, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. The addition of the progress tracker is a much needed one and they should keep it. More transparency in this case is a good thing. However, if they're hoping we focus more on the progress tracker as a measure of progress than the patch cards, it's a bit frustrating and even confusing. According to CIG's own description, the progress tracker describes progress over time on certain features. But the features end on the progress tracker doesn't mean that the feature is complete or deliverable. It just means that the progress is temporarily paused as they shift the team to focus on other features that have more priority before returning to said feature. And this leaves us to do much the same as reading tea leaves when even the deliverables portion of the progress tracker isn't to be understood as showing when deliverables are to be delivered. I mean, how many of you guys actually even knew that about the progress tracker before I just told you? I bet the majority of you didn't. Only the most die-hard of backers will even understand what the progress tracker means. This makes it very difficult for us backers, and for me as a content creator, to understand what goals CIG has for the next patch or even year. It makes Star Citizen's development team seem rudderless when I know they're not, and I see this leading to even more confusion and misinterpretation of what CIG is trying to do with this game. But what's worse, and I think this is really the biggest issue I have with this change to the roadmap, is that without these clear cards that can be understood as goals for deliverables, how are we able to hold them to any semblance of account? Because as much as I'm sure that they have internal deadlines and deliverables, it's much harder to give them pressure when we don't know what they are. Without these public goals, it reduces what I view as much needed constraints to deliver creative results in a timely fashion. But let me qualify this a bit, and I'm not trying to brag. It's really important that you understand that I'm coming from this from a professional point of view. Many of you probably already know that I work professionally designing homes and buildings in Taiwan and in the US. So understand that when I say that constraints breed creativity, it's not coming from some axiom that I read in a book. I found it to be profoundly true through hard-fought experience. In fact, just this past year, I had one such experience in a super high-stakes bid where we learned of a project in the last minute from a prospective client who wanted a 24-story building designed for downtown Taipei. We only had 2 weeks to come up with a design if we committed to it, with a failure condition resulting in a big hit to our reputation and credibility in Taiwan's small but profitable development community. The principal architect and I must have debated for an hour or more on whether or not we should commit to this client's proposal request, but in the end, we did, and we won. And without that pressure to deliver, I don't think we could have come up with such an exceptional design. Now, just to tell you, I'm sorry I can't show it to you. I'm legally unable to due to client privacy from our contract. Hopefully I can show it to you guys someday. I hope that helps drive home that a reasonable goal can create exceptional results. Were it just a week that we needed to come up with the design, I think we would have turned it down. I don't believe that crunch through torturous overtime is beneficial to the design process, but some healthy pressure and constraints can make a huge difference. And that's what I've always hoped that the roadmap for Star Citizen could be. A healthy set of constraints for CIG and a place where we could go to understand what the goals are for CIG going into the future to make the game that I personally love become a reality. So to not have that, my heart sinks at the thought. CIG, if you're listening, please reconsider this change. I understand that people misinterpreted the roadmap and continue to do so, and it breeds negativity and negative press articles whenever things are removed from the roadmap. But in my view, it's their own damned fault for misunderstanding the difference between tentative and committed. There are always going to be naysayers, and statistically, the refunds Reddit is always going to grow as Star Citizen's community grows. But these things shouldn't be allowed to derail what I view as a necessary, clear transparency about the game's goals. And ultimately, the larger community cares about the bottom line, tangible progress. The clearer CIG can be about their goals, the fewer the misunderstandings there will be. And this, I believe, is the key to bringing community morale back up again, which should, of course, also lead to better funding going into the future. But hey, that's just this show's 2 cents. See you next time.